everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of February and the very powerful full supermoon that we have coming up in Virgo on the 19th. Now we go into the middle of February with this continuing very hot, volatile energy of Mars in its own warrior sign of Aries, conjunct Eris, the goddess of discord, and also conjunct Uranus. That very revolutionary energy. Now the conjunction between Mars and Uranus becomes exact on the 13th. So that's potentially quite a day of fireworks and, as I say, eruptive revolutionary energy. Because that's going to happen at the 29th degree, the critical degree of Aries, and there's often a tremendous urgency for change at that time. It can create breakthroughs in situations that have been very stuck, but it's also connected to this very strong, upward moving, eruptive, sudden, unexpected energy. And that, as I will have mentioned before in the videos, can be either environmentally in the form of volcanoes, earthquakes, it can be politically, it can be geopolitically, it can be socially with protests and riots, etc. So we never quite know how it will manifest, but the middle of the month is very, very pointed in that direction. Now, we also have at this time the last gasp, as it were, of the Uranus-Pluto square. The Uranus-Pluto square I talked about for years because it began in 2011. We saw the Arab Spring then, and it continued through till 2015, where we've seen a lot of uprisings in many countries. And although it isn't exact anymore, because Pluto is at 22 of Capricorn, Uranus is at 29 of Aries, it is still operational. So this is the last period of time in this second half of February that we will feel that energy. And I've written a whole chapter on that in my first book, You Don't Really Believe in Astrology, Do You? How historically it's very connected to riots, protests, demands for greater equality, demands for greater freedom, and social transformation. Now, I might have mentioned in the last video that in the 60s, mid-60s, we had a conjunction between Uranus and Pluto, and that was very connected to the demands for greater civil rights, black rights, gay rights, women's lib, etc. So we still live in a society that is highly unequal. So where we're seeing these eruptions, be it in France or UK or Venezuela or many countries across the world, it is a demand to be heard, a demand for greater equality within the system. So that's going to be very strong. Now, the energy will shift slightly because on the 14th of the month, Mars moves into Taurus. So whatever you initiated as projects from the beginning of the year when Mars was in Aries, because that's a highly initiatory, entrepreneurial, let's get the show on the road, new ideas type of energy, Mars into Taurus, 14th of the month, and will stay in Taurus until the end of March. So for the next 6 weeks, it's an excellent time to finish up the projects you started. It gives tenacity, it gives determination to finish up what you began. See where Taurus falls in your birth chart, and if you don't know, please check out this link above. That will take you to my store. You can buy a two-part tutorial video series. You can download a free birth chart from my website, and that will help you to find out where Taurus falls in your chart. It's very, very simple to find, because wherever Mars is moving, which it will be from the 14th of February through to the end of March, that is normally an area of activation or change for you, that particular area of life. And all the more so because on the 5th of March, Uranus will be moving back into Taurus, and that is a huge shift, which I'll refer to here, but mainly that'll be in the next video. So it's a very big time of changing things up, shaking off routine and staleness, and creating more freedom for you, and higher level perspective, really. That's the Uranus side in that area of life. So that's going to be a very busy, active area for you wherever Taurus sits in your chart. Okay, let's come back to Chiron now, because the big shift in this second half of February is the move of transiting Chiron from Pisces into Aries. Now, Chiron has a 50 to a 51 year orbit. It is quite an eccentric orbit, and it's highly elliptical as well. So Chiron will sometimes stay in a sign for 6 years, other times for 8 years. In fact, it's entering Aries now. It will stay there for 8 years until 2027. So this is a big shift of energy. Now, its orbit is very steeply inclined to the ecliptic. And you will have heard the term wounded healer. That's how Chiron has been referred to. But partly because of this very steep inclination of its orbit, it is also referred to as the maverick or the outsider. Kind of comes from the outside, as it were, into the realms between it, orbits between Saturn, which I consider to be 3D tangible, mundane reality, and Uranus, which I consider to be fourth dimension, higher level energy, where we can get sudden insights and downloads of information from our superconscious. And Chiron weaves its orbit between the two, so it wants to constantly shift us from 3D reality to a higher state of being. And that is always Chiron's impetus, always in its transits. It's very associated with healing, hence the term wounded healer, and it's quite shamanic in its nature. It takes you on quite a journey when you have transits of Chiron. It is always associated with alternative medicine and not conventional medicine. That's its nature. Now, it's very interesting. I was just referring to the Uranus-Pluto square that we're having the last of in this second half of February. But Chiron, the last time it moved into Aries was in 1968. And 1968 across the world is almost considered a year of revolution. Right across the world, particularly the Western world, we had protests and riots and sit-ins at universities across the West. And Uranus-Pluto conjunction was a very big part of that, but so was Chiron. Chiron moving into Aries is a statement of I am, I exist, and you need to recognize my need to exist. So it's part of that picture. So Chiron moving into Aries again will feed that same urge of you must recognize me. I am and I have a need to exist on the part of everyone in society. So it's going to be very interesting to watch that unfold. Now, when we have Chiron transits, sometimes, let's say Chiron is transiting your ascendant or your sun or your moon or the ruler of your 6th or 12th houses. They're connected to health. And again, if you don't know, check out the link above for the tutorials. You could become a little bit poorly, not very well, for instance, but it is always connected to healing. And what it means in that instance is that you have to integrate the meaning of the illness, how this illness arose, what is the meaning that you have to integrate, what was the origin of it, so you can shift your consciousness to that higher level and heal the illness in that way. I picked up a bug in the Himalayas decades ago and suffered with a particular condition, and when transiting transiting Chiron came to conjunct my sun last year, there was a very significant healing for me that took place. So that is always the positive purpose of Chiron. Sometimes it can manifest Chiron transits, if it's coming to aspect our ascendant or our Mercury or our ruler of our 3rd or 11th houses, those are the friendship houses, maybe a friend who hurts us. It's somebody often who hurts you emotionally. And that's where this feeling of the outsider or the maverick comes in, because there's usually if you are hurt in this way, there's a feeling of it's just not fair. There's a feeling of raw injustice. It's just not fair. But that makes you recognize your difference, because one of the very particular things about Chiron is its purpose is to help us recognize our unique essence, if you like, our dharma, what we are meant to become, what we're meant to blossom into. And in that sense, I really believe that where Chiron sits in your chart reinforces your nodal axis. My last book, How to Co-Create Using the Secret Language of the Universe, was all about your nodal axis, which is about your soul's growth in this lifetime. But Chiron reinforces that by discovering your true uniqueness. And sometimes it is via being excommunicated or fired or thrown out of the group in some way that we think, yes, I am different, but that is to be celebrated, not mourned. So the message of Chiron is usually at these times, you have outgrown that company. So move on to be with people with whom you have a more compatible frequency, because your frequency is raising, it's changing. And in that sense, you move beyond the pain, and in months to come, you look back and think it was one of the best things that ever happened to you, that you've kind of changed your friendship group. So that, as I say, is the message. It's always to shift us upwards or to heal us. It's a return to wholeness. I think that is a good way to look at it, a return to wholeness and integration of the original cause of the disease, the meaning of the disease, if we're poorly in a physical way. But it's always about a shift of consciousness upwards. Now, Chiron in Aries is going to have other meanings. It can mean that we have to take more responsibility for our health. It can also mean that healthcare is going to become much more individualized, because Aries is I am. It is the sign of the individual. And this is sort of linking at the same time to Uranus's move into Taurus very soon on the 5th of March, because Uranus is about technology and Taurus is the body. So already there are many apps that we can use to diagnose certain conditions in our own bodies. There are certain computer programs, I've written about this on my last newsletter, computer programs that not only diagnose, they scans all the elements in our body and diagnoses conditions, but also heals them, sends vibration to heal them. And this is linked also, of course, to the Uranus semi-square to Neptune right now, using technology and vibration to create healing. So a lot around technology, a lot around vibration, a lot around magnetism that will give us this sense of individualized healing as we move through the next 7 years with Chiron in Aries. It's very interesting thinking of Uranus in Taurus, which is about to move into Taurus. 84 years ago, when it last moved into Taurus, we had the development of things like the Rife machine, which is a frequency healing machine. It's coming back into the media now. I'm seeing it being mentioned a lot on social media. So be aware of those trends and really benefit from them in a highly individualized way. So this is the very big positive sides of Chiron moving into Aries. Of course, when it moves into Aries, it will be on that 0 degrees of Aries point, and that is the world axis. 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, are essentially the world axis. And so the symbolism of Chiron, of either being wounded or a sense of being the outsider or a sense of healing and integration, one of those or more of those things are likely to be thrown up into the public sphere in a bigger way. And that move of Chiron into Aries, as I say, happens on the 18th of the month. So Chiron is at the world axis as we move into our full supermoon. The full supermoon happens on the 19th of the month at 0 degrees 42 minutes of Virgo. It happens at 7:53 a.m. Pacific and 3:53 p.m. UK time. Now, lots to say about this. This is the closest supermoon of the year of 2019. And so it will appear, and let's hope we have clear skies that night, it will appear at 15% closer and larger than the average full moon that we have, and 30% closer and larger than the moon when it is its furthest point in its elliptical orbit. It's when it's at apogee, the furthest point from the Earth. So it's going to appear really, really powerful. And of course, it will have a much more powerful pull on our psyches, on tectonic plates. So we have to be very aware that supermoons can cause high tides and big shifts in the Earth's natural plate system, which can create earthquakes, etc., tsunamis. Now, this is the second supermoon in a run of 3. We had one in January, we could have another one in March, but this, as I say, is the closest of the year. It is the 4th full moon in a series of 5 that is happening at 0 degrees of its sign. This one's at 0 of Virgo. The 6th full moon in April is at 29 degrees of its sign. So as I've mentioned before, 0 degrees, 29 degrees of signs are known as the power degrees or the critical degrees. So this is where, together with the big shifts of Chiron, changing sign, 51-year orbit, Uranus about to change sign, 84-year orbit, these big shifts and senses of an ending of the Earth's episode and a beginning. And I think many of us feel that ourselves, that it's the ending of a big episode in history as we shift into the new, when things are going to be pretty fast moving. Now, still at this full supermoon, just before I go on to that, actually, just to remind you, full moons are always a closure, a completion, a culmination. So see where 0 of Virgo falls in your chart. Or you getting the fruits of your labour in some ways. This is some closure of a project that you've been working on and it's now coming to its end. Is it shining a light on something in that house area, that area of life that you were unaware of until now? And getting to know whatever that secret is going to help you modify your direction going forwards. So these are the very sort of personalised sides of a full moon. It's generally, for sensitive people, it's harder to sleep the last few days before a full moon, and particularly before this big supermoon. You might struggle a little to sleep. That just shows how interconnected we are with the moon cycles, when it is that direct a physical experience because of what's happening with the moon. I'm always banging on about how interconnected we are with our universe, but that is a very clear and obvious example of it. Now, I mentioned that the supermoon would have a very strong pull on the tectonic plates, and at this full supermoon, we still have Mars conjunct Uranus. Now, Mars will have moved into Taurus by then. It's at 3 degrees of Taurus. Uranus is still at this critical 29 degrees of Aries, so it's an out of sign conjunction, but it's a pretty close conjunction. When those planets are in combination, they are the most common for volcanoes and earthquakes. So particularly because Mars has moved into an earth sign of Taurus, we may see that symbolism manifesting more as potential volcanoes, earthquakes, rather than just in a social, political or geopolitical sense. So be aware that conjunction is continuing until the 23rd of the month, and then Mars starts to pull away and it starts to separate. We also still at this full moon have the square between Uranus, goddess of discord, Uranus, this revolutionary energy, and also planet of awakening, don't forget, very importantly, square to Pluto and the South Node in Capricorn. So this is our last experience, if you like, that the Virgo full moon is shining a light on, of this social transformation energy, this coming up from the streets, this revolutionary energy versus the controlling top-down, the repressive energy. The revolutionary meets the repressive. And we're going to feel that for the rest of the month. So again, as I say, if you look across the world, whether it's UK, US, France, Venezuela, many other countries are experiencing this because Pluto and Saturn in Capricorn are this controlling top-down energy. Now, just to enlarge a little bit on the sign of Virgo at this full moon, Virgo is the sign of efficiency. It's a sign of getting everything working like clockwork. So this can be a very good time to declutter, to clear out anything in terms of your work habits, how you use your time. Time management is very connected to Virgo. Is it cleaning out your diet? Are you going to go on a detox? Because Virgo is about purification and refinement. It's also about your thinking process because Virgo is ruled by Mercury. So catch your negative thinking, catch your negative self-talk to purify your day-to-day thinking as well. So very good time to do that. Now, Virgo is also connected to healing, so it links with Chiron in this respect, and it's healing always connected to natural medicine. That can be plants, it can be herbs, it can be spices, but it's always using the ancient wisdom of the earth to help our healing. So this is where the Virgo full supermoon is coming into combination with that shift of Chiron into Aries. Speaking of Mercury, Mercury at this full supermoon comes to conjunct Neptune. Mercury is at 16 of Pisces, Neptune is at 15, so it's a very tight conjunction, and this is wonderful for creative thinking. One of the best aspects. It's about just a state of being. It's not about analytical, logical thinking. It's about sitting and being in nature and tuning in and observing whatever you may observe with shifts of energy. It's about meditation. It's about altered states that connect you to a sense of oneness and to a sense of source as well. It's really beautiful in that respect. It's about divine love. It's about compassion, but beautifully creative energy. And of course, we still have our ongoing square to Jupiter. So it's now Mercury and Neptune squaring Jupiter in Sagittarius. And as I've mentioned before, because Pisces and Sagittarius are mutable signs, they don't have boundaries. It is unbounded. It is without limits. So this can give us this wonderful feeling of infinite possibilities, infinite potentials, bigger horizons, bigger dreams, blue skying. What can we imagine for a better future for ourselves and the world? And it's boosted in its optimism by transiting Uranus being trine the moon at this time as well. But we can go a bit overboard, so be careful not to overpromise or just have a bit of a reality check with this aspect, because it can lead you to jump to things which may not be completely realistic. But on the other hand, it's a wonderful spiritual impetus again to help you raise your consciousness. Now, Saturn and Pluto continuing in Capricorn will certainly give us a reality check, but these energies are so completely different, it's almost hard to find a point of integration within them, because so that may be why ongoing this year we may have a sense of expansion with Jupiter square Neptune. See where Jupiter particularly is falling in your chart, which house area, Sagittarius, because that area may well feel like it's expanding. Whereas where Saturn and Pluto are moving through Capricorn, see where that falls in your chart, is feeling more contracted. So very, very different energies in that respect. And both of those aspects are continuing really for the whole year, so I'll be referring to them a lot. But wonderfully rich time that we're going into here, a tremendous time. I mean, the first few months of 2019 are spectacularly exciting in terms of changeability, but they can also be quite volatile. They can be quite a wild ride, and that is why I'm really, really encouraging you to keep on coming back to your spiritual anchor. Have an internal point of reference that, in Buddhism, the belief is that whatever is happening externally in your outer reality should not matter, that you always meet it with equanimity. You are always at the hub of the wheel, whether it's good or bad, it's just this too shall pass. And you have that steadiness of being. And really what I'm suggesting here is similar to that, in that whatever is coming at you, and there'll be many fast-moving events in the outer world, we can say, no, I can find my place of default, if you like. I can find my place of peace, my peace of calm. I can easily shift my frequency to a higher state of being than I would be in if I was just rolling along with the random events, being buffeted by whatever was coming at me. And that, I'm going to keep kind of repeating that message in different ways through 2019, because it is so important for all of us as we ride these tides. So, a great deal happening in this second half of February, even more as we go into March. So enjoy this amazing, very powerful, closest supermoon of the year in Virgo on the 19th of the month. And if you'd like more information about my books, my tutorial videos, my very long monthly newsletter when I can go into much more detail about many of these themes, just check out my website pamgregory.com, and particularly the tutorial videos, which people really love. If you have that question, what does it mean for me? The tutorial videos will answer that question for you. And thank you so much for listening, and bye for now.